All right, hello everyone. Thank you for sticking around for our last panel of the day. It is one that is like near and dear to my heart. I'm glad you're going to be here for it because it's going to be great. It is called Why Decentralization Matters. And please welcome to the stage a great list of panelists being led and moderated by Brad Cowan, founder of Distro Media.
All right, well, you know, they do save the best for last. And I'm glad that everyone who's here appreciates that. But we do have some incredible panelists. We're going to finish strong today. I think this is actually the very last panel. And we have a pretty broad topic. It's why decentralization matters. And I guess we might be preaching to the choir here, but I was just thinking, you know, in order for blockchain to get mass adoption, we're going to have to, you know, people are going to have to convince the normies that this is a way to go. And also, you know, there may be some areas where decentralization may not be the solution. So, all right, well, let's just introduce folks here. We've got Evin McMullen here on my right. She's the co-founder and CSO of Privado ID, formerly Polygon ID. We've got Maxwell Saal, the head of partnerships at Oxbow. We've got Vyacheslav Shebanov, the chief technology officer, DRPC. And we have Chad Nehemiah, engineer at Atoma Network, and who's also worked on the libp2p project. Welcome all. All right, well, let's just start off, you know, I think I actually had a little chat with Vyacheslav yesterday and just something in the news talking about the Bybit hack and what, you know, decentralization. How would you talk about decentralization in the context of the Bybit hack?
Yeah, so probably a lot of you know that, you know, $1.5 billion were stolen recently. It's kind of the biggest hack in history, I think. And yeah, like what we were talking about is like, you know, they stole money on Ethereum. They stole basically ETH. And for some reason, they decided to move like all this money, or part of this money, to Bitcoin. And then probably a lot of you remember, if you follow Twitter discussions, that there were a lot of FUD about like roll back the chain, which was unfortunately like none from Ethereum was talking about it. Like people from Solana, Bitcoin were talking about it, and then like it spread because they started moving money to Ethereum from Ethereum to Bitcoin, and there's pressure to freeze, roll back, or do something was put on the bridges. And like a lot of bridges starting, like some of them are like decentralized or permissionless. And a lot of bridges also face this kind of question, should we do something? And that's a general question, like if someone basically stole money, should we do something? And if we should, or maybe we shouldn't, but if we should, like what? Like, and to what extent? And what entities actually should do something? For example, like Ethereum probably shouldn't do anything, but maybe bridges should. Or if bridges shouldn't, maybe like RPC providers should. Or like, I mean, that's an interesting philosophical question, which I personally do not have answer. But I think it's important to discuss it because like, yeah, credible neutrality is super important, but you know, we don't want North Korea to use this money to nuke us.
Anyone else want to weigh in on this one?
What's that?
Anybody else want to weigh in on this
absolutely. So I work for a project called Oxbow. We are doing like something of a privacy protocol, right? Similar to some of the ones that I've done in the past. But our whole thing is that we are essentially doing what we call association sets, trying to keep legitimate people from being associated with these bad actors. I wrote something like this on Twitter the other day, and I think this was a pretty good take in response to, I don't quite remember who it was, but basically, yeah, I think of Ethereum as infrastructure. Infrastructure has a responsibility to be neutral, track the funds. That's really all your responsibility as protocols, on the other hand, have no responsibility to accept those funds regardless of where they came from. And in fact, like, I think that crypto is people, right? I think that that's the whole point of decentralization. That's the whole reason that we're here, so that we can be people doing our financial business instead of just these big corporations that we rely on to handle everything from our data to our money, right? But we, as these people, have a responsibility to curate who gets to play ball. And I think it's absurd to think that we should be prioritizing decentralization to the point that we should just allow major bad actors like hackers from North Korea to profit $1.5 billion of illegitimately gotten money, and that we would just assume that the rest of the infrastructure has to maintain neutrality on that. I totally disagree with that. I think that protocols are built on top of Ethereum, and I think that those protocols definitely should do what they can to protect their users and just themselves from this association with crime.
Chad, going to you on this next one, another topic that's, I mean, I've seen several presentations just on this stage today about crypto agent, AI agents, and there's, you know, a lot on the intersection of blockchain and AI, and I'm curious, you know, decentralization, what's the talking points on decentralization in the context of the rise of blockchain AI projects?
Yeah, I mean, I think actually I would disagree with the last two sentiments in the sense that I think the whole reason why we created decentralized infrastructure was to facilitate some kind of credibility neutral transition of value, and now so to even try and turn back on that to say that we can censor transactions in some sort of way is not only a problem that has actively been worked on at the protocol level, like for instance when you saw the OFAC or the OFAC censorship attempts, there was now the Protocol Guild moved to pass or work on proposals for transaction inclusion and that sort of thing. So I think it's not to say that bad actors should have a free reign, but this is not something that is going to be solved at L1 level. This is where, again, you have social political negotiations to figure out how do you come to some kind of agreement that countries don't get nuked, but not everything needs to be solved with a blockchain. But to answer your question specifically on how this plays into AI, I think, ironically, even though there's strong economic security in terms of how crypto is actually distributed amongst a number of investors, if you look at the number of validators, they're really controlled by probably 2 to 3 major entities. I know that Lido, and Slava made a great point to me earlier that there are a number of other people running validator infrastructure within the Lido umbrella, but nevertheless, they're still under one organization, run a substantial amount along with Coinbase. So if you look at geographic decentralization, I wouldn't say there's much. Most Ethereum validators are kind of distributed across the global north. And I would even go further to say that there's a strong disincentive to run solo stakers. Most solo stakers, who I even know personally, are just checking out and just giving their money to Lido because it's just too much of a burden to even run it to get the same kind of rewards and incentives that somebody else who just gives their rewards to Lido is. And I know this is a little long-winded, but I'm getting to my point. I think I'm a bit nihilistic in that dream of geographic decentralization for validators is completely dead. I think the new frontier now is with LLMs, and I see a particular use case around local AI. So, for instance, what we're doing at Atoma is creating privacy-centric AI through TEEs. I know it's become a buzzword, but it's what we're actually doing. Executing these jobs on GPUs in trusted execution environments and returning the results of these AI service requests through an encrypted channel back to users. I think I see an opportunity for a lot of people in, the Global South, indigenous communities who want to preserve their knowledge, but can now actually be economically compensated for it by training these local LLMs and then setting up some kind of paywall, which could very much be through the existing crypto rails, where if persons want API keys to actually query these models, because let's be real, I mean, everybody knows who Sean Paul is. I'm from Jamaica. If you ask ChatGPT to explain any song by Sean Paul other than Temperature or Get Busy, it's going to be a complete disaster. But people want to know about Jamaican culture. Imagine if we were the ones training these models and then people can actually get the best answers from us because we're the experts in those fields, and we can have these LLMs now on some kind of marketplace in a decentralized way. So I think that is the new frontier for how decentralization can really matter to actually get meaningful answers and now kind of create a level economic playing ground between the global north and the global south.
That's fascinating. Yeah, go ahead.
There's a little bit of a spicy take there that I appreciate, but I want to push back on in that, you describe the challenges of nation-state interaction, for example, as a social and political coordination effort that is separate from the credible neutrality of the chain. I actually think that the example of perhaps all of our work here, of having an opinionated protocol, set of capabilities built on top of that neutral infrastructure, is evidence of the benefit we derive from decentralization. In fact, so as a quick question, does anyone know why June 2015 is important? That was June 2015. Why is that important to us here at ETHDenver? That was when Ethereum launched, and it has not gone down since. There are very few protocols of the size, scale, and value that Ethereum represents that can also make this claim. So I think that, to Max's point, Ethereum is people, right? It is a human coordination tool that is enabled by human coordination. And by virtue of its decentralized structure, though there's much progress to be made, certainly on the staking front, that minimum viable decentralization to enable opinionated takes on top of the protocol layer, I think is evidence of why it matters, not why it is failing us. But Max, I imagine you probably have some thoughts there as well.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so quick question. Are you pro-crime? Do you think it's okay to steal people's money?
No, I'm...
Okay, that's not, I don't want to get long-winded here, but I think that no is the first answer that a lot of people would give to that, right? And I think that when we're trying to compare, traditional finance, cash, for instance, or moving gold, or any sort of store of value, right? Like, what we're doing here is preserving digital value and creating something that's open access that people can use. But the idea that we have to be neutral to the point that we say, when somebody runs off with somebody's funds, that when somebody cons somebody into giving up their life savings, that the rest of us who interact with this technology on a daily basis have to look at that and say, like, we're neutral here. That's cool. I think that's ridiculous. I really don't think that's okay.
I want to step in because I think we need to balance a little bit. There's the idea like pro-crime isn't. Are you pro-crime or not pro-crime is a very interesting question. But with Bybit is actually very interesting example of it. It's super clear, but it's not super clear all the time. Like, who defines what's crime and what's not? It's kind of, for example, okay, if we talking about Bybit hack, probably a lot of 99% of the people will say, yeah, it's bad, and yeah, if I can stop it, I will probably try to do it. But you can make a number of examples where it's not so clear. And the thing is, for example, what bothers me, that, for example, FBI will be deciding what's crime and what's not. And, for example, for US, it's completely maybe reasonable, yeah? But blockchain is not, US company. It's worldwide. And things that FBI consider crime in US may be not considered crime in different countries or cultures.
Sure. I guess, sorry. I know that I didn't let you get in a word in edgewise, and I do apologize for that. I guess my point is this, right? Like, when we're talking about the difference between infrastructure and the things that people do, like DeFi, for instance, somebody participating in an LP pool and getting some returns on that, I really don't think that it's in anyone's interest to participate in a liquidity pool. And yes, the jurisdiction question here is important, right? And I think that's up to the individual projects to decide. If you want to build a project on Ethereum that enables stolen money to like go through you, you know, it's neutral infrastructure, go for it. But I think the idea that you shouldn't get in any trouble for that is a different question entirely.
Yeah, I think, let me clarify my position. It's about what is the right tools for the job. I mean, trying to now turn Ethereum as a blockchain, as a foundation for establishing universal morality, I think may not be the best use case for it. And there is precedent for this, right? I mean, look at the United Nations, for instance. You'll have a vast majority of countries vote on particular issues, you know, whether it's related to a genocide or not, and the Security Council will veto it, right? So this is a non-trivial problem, but I think what should be emphasized here is that this is not necessarily a technological problem. And just to concretize it, let's be realistic about it. Let's say it is the North Korean hackers who have access to these funds. It still has to go through some sort of exit rails, right? It's not as if to say, at least to the best of my knowledge, I'm not that well versed on North Korean, financial infrastructure. But I don't think that they could just exit all of that crypto and then, suddenly become like this force without going through some kind of KYC regulated financial rails. And I think that kind of speaks to the broader point I was making earlier, is that this whole vision of, banking the unbanked hasn't really materialized. It's really mostly the Western countries that are really using crypto in any meaningful way. And it's really a minority of Westerners on top of that who are doing it in a meaningful way. So I think there needs to be kind of a separation of, okay, what is the role of blockchain infrastructure as financial rails? What are the roles of other institutions that may or may not need to be decentralized in terms of regulating socio-political issues and bilateral agreements and trying to come to this consensus around morality and who versus who and that sort of thing? I just think there are different issues separately than what happened in the Bybit hack.
Just to pivot a little bit, which I think we're sort of moving. This goes right into a question about identity, which is your specialty. And I mean, traditionally it's been kind of a function of government, right? And so what are you working on, and how does that solve problems with decentralization?
So just yesterday morning, we announced Billions.network, which is the first human and AI network built with mobile-first verification. This means that you can prove that you are a person, prove that you are from a specific nation, that you are part of a specific set or not, such as KYC, that you have certain assets, certain interests, all from your mobile device, without any of your personal data being leaked or being presented to another party that you do not know and you do not trust. This means no proprietary hardware, no databases full of body parts are required to allow you to assert yourself on chain and to empower other teams building on top, exactly as we just discussed, to make opinions, their own opinions about how they choose to build and who they choose to serve. So whether it's for localization, age-based access control, helping builders on places like Arweave decide which content is legal and which is going to land them in jail if they are relaying it. So in order to provide a safe and logical path forward for builders to make these informed decisions about who and how they serve, we need this form of ZK identity.
But is that, like, who grants that identity? If somebody says you are you, who is making that call?
So I don't believe that any one party should tell you, you are you. I don't believe one private company should own the definition of who is allowed to be a person alive in this world. And that's why with Billions.network, we combine multiple sources of data, multiple proven authorities that are able to provide context about a particular person, a particular party, and their associated keys. So whether that's a government entity, whether that is an AI agent that's been identified as interacting with that party, whether that is a peer, we think that the combination of these authorities can provide the best way for an individual to choose how to represent themselves with sufficient complexity and specificity, but without doxing themselves on the most permanent and public platform that the world has ever known.
But in order for your solution to work, does it have to become kind of the main solution, or can it coexist with lots of different solutions?
This is why decentralization matters.
Okay.
So as long as there is more than one company in the world, as long as there is more than one country in the world, as long as there is more than one way that a country signs with their public key the data in your passport, then necessarily we need flexible frameworks such as the Billions Network that are able to incorporate these multiple authorities and enable both builders and individuals to combine this data together.
I think that's a really good point, actually. And like, this is what I think of when I think about decentralization mattering, right? The point is that you as the individual are able to derive some sort of autonomy and power with what you do with the network, right? But again, this does kind of come back to the protocols themselves and who they're trying to build for. I think people's identities, I totally agree. This is like something that I don't think we should be controlling by, think about Facebook, Instagram, all that kind of stuff. That's generally like the most important social capital, crypto, maybe Twitter, that we have in this space. But that is very centrally controlled by people who, by and large, are subject to, the nationalities' regulations that they exist within. I think that part of being people on chain, part of being a society, is knowing where what the rules are, right? And making those rules socially. I think that's like the main point of all of this, is like truly creating something digital, like that is not just administrated, but administered by the people who use it. Yeah.
Sorry, I got something.
Vyacheslav, when you and I were talking yesterday, sorry.
We've all been there, don't worry.
You were talking about some of the trade-offs from a business perspective, whether customers or whether the business necessarily works best with maximum decentralization in the context of DRPC, and you were saying there's lots of trade-offs in that spectrum between centralization and decentralization.
So we're building DRPC. It's a decentralized RPC provider. So, for us, we talk with a lot of customers, and what we faced is actually potential customers' protocols. When you say them that you're building something decentralized, they kind of become negative, in the sense that if it's decentralized, it means that doesn't work. So, we don't have a lot of time, so my idea is that decentralization is very important, but if you build something truly decentralized that nobody will use, you shouldn't be doing that, because it's useless, and it's just, spent time. And my opinion is that in decentralization, we should also understand what things we pursue. For example, when we talk about Ethereum decentralization, we pursue credible neutrality. If we talk about, RPC decentralization, we probably pursue censorship resistance. And my idea in our talk was that basically we should stop building products that is impossible to use that are decentralized. And we should start building products that may be less decentralized. And here, for example, I totally don't understand people dunking on Base. It's kind of a set of compromises and trade-offs. Yeah, you can do and experiment that. But if you make a set of trade-offs that actually make your chain or app usable, I think it's totally worth it. Because again, if we're building something that nobody wants to use, it's just waste of time. And yeah, that was my idea. So it's pragmatic decentralization. And we should understand the values that we want to get, or properties we want to get. Decentralization most of the time is means to an end, not like end goal.
That's it. Thank you so much. Not a moment too soon. But this has been a strangely spicy panel. Thank you all for
Maybe we
coming.
could go
Thank
for
you
quite
for
a
being
bit
here.
more time if we had the time to do it.
Thank you guys
This
so
could
much.
run.
We'll see you on chain.
Thank you.
Thank you.